What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. I'm BobbyFi. I'm here back with my man Sheets. We're going to be doing tonight's Draftkings and Fanduel lineup builds. We're going to talk a little bit of DFS, what's been happening recently. We've been on fire. Shout out to State Kings, by the way. I've just been absolutely crushing over there, and I appreciate all the kind words from everybody. We appreciate all you guys tuning in. We want to hear your feedback. Give it to us everywhere you can. Give us the thumbs up, the like button. We're going to jump into this slate. We had some more close calls last night. Sheets, why don't you get into just a real quick sum up of last night and then talk about your overall thoughts on the slate?
Well, last night was really, really good. I mean, for on slates like that where you don't need like zillions of points to win, I don't want to say usually, but I tend to have a better chance of getting first and second. And I don't know whether that's my approach or just variance or just sample size or whatever, but that's just the way it is. And yesterday was a good example of that. We made a couple of really, really good calls. Now, forget about what the results were. Remember, the one thing that we talked about was I don't want to get too much into last night's slate, but Kai Bowman as being a good pivot on FanDuel from an ownership perspective, that worked out really well. And two things that we didn't talk about pre-show, which I wanted to tell you, Bobby, is remember I had one on-brand play and one off-brand approach that both seemed to work out. That Mitchell Robinson kind of got lucky, right? He got that fourth quarter run when you can't foul out, and he had 0.8% ownership, worked out to be really good. And an total off-brand play for me, which I was kind of unlucky they announced it, was Chris Middleton. I just kind of had this weird idea that he was going to end up starting, so I actually played him on FanDuel, and I also figured that even if they were announcing him starting after lock, that the public wouldn't react as much to it. So I ended up playing a guy I almost never play, just because I didn't think that the public would get on it as much. And even in the blowout, he totally did well. Yeah. But again, results aside, I thought our approach was good. I thought that, even though Dennis Smith Jr. busted, I thought that our approach to use him in lineups without a lot of other chalk was good. It was a good approach. And, I really appreciate a lot of the comments because, again, before this, I didn't really do DFS content. And I was always wondering if people would get anything out of it. And I really do appreciate the private messages I've gotten as well, because obviously Bobby's been doing this for a long time and he's the expert. And I really have to just continue to remember to try to give my own takes on things that are not just, who's the best play and things like that. So hopefully my approach and giving you something a little different to think about based on my own experiences is going to be enough value added for you guys. But I really do appreciate all these comments.
Yeah, and it's funny because a little bit, I think you have it, and you've helped my game even too, because you'll point out maybe something I didn't really consider earlier at the time, or reminding me even of things that I've said in the past. It's a helpful tool, and hopefully we're sharing that with the people now. So, having said that, I think it's worth it to get into this slate. This is a really exciting slate. I've got to go get my daughter later. She just made the basketball team, so congratulations to her.
What is her price on FanDuel tonight?
Her price on FanDuel, I'll tell you what, she's a little bit taller than some of these guys who are playing tonight. But anyway,
can we play her at the center position? Or?
We can play her at the center position, and actually she's got power forward eligibility, so I think we're going to be okay there.
Sounds good.
All right. Anyway, let's jump into the first game. What do we got first? You got Orlando.
Okay. So speaking of, am I sharing or no?
You're sharing, bud.
Okay. Speaking of playing guys that I don't play, all right, let's get into this first game. Now, normally the first game on the slate is just someone like, oh, God, here comes Charlotte against Detroit for the 80th time during this month. But right out of the gate, you have one of the games that's going to garner a lot of ownership, that's going to garner a lot of excitement, and for good reason, the Orlando-Washington game. So let me just go through, again, who is going to rate as the good plays, and then kind of, maybe give you a take on it. From the Washington side, there's 3 plays that kind of stand out for me. Now, again, that doesn't mean I'm playing all these guys in the same lineup. I just kind of put them in here. Mm-hmm. Was number 1, or I don't even see any particular order, but Bradley Beal, Thomas Bryant, and our own favorite Rui Hachimura. Mm-hmm. Who we've played. I played literally every day since you got me on him, 5 games ago, and he's been just he's been fine. And I think that those 3 guys all look really, really good on the Washington side. I I actually like Rui a lot, especially. And now I'm presuming that that Wagner is out because, I mean, if he's out, I mean, that gives Rui the opportunity to play, I think, backup 5 to when Bryant's out also. So, I mean, I think Rui's in a particularly really good spot. And my first look at ownership doesn't really have any real standout, popular plays. I mean, the most popular plays 20% as far as I'm looking at. So you got to see where this all kind of plays out because there's a lot of plays that you could play here. But I think those 3 guys all look good. And on the Orlando side, speaking of guys I don't play a lot, is Aaron Gordon, who is one of my most hated DFS guys ever. And I figure on the night right after I play Chris Middleton, maybe it'd be a nice thing to play Aaron Gordon. And I think that in this particular matchup, I think this is a perfect opportunity for Aaron Gordon. He was injured for a while, and then he came back. And he wasn't doing so well before he got injured. But when he came back, he was like, 3 for 10 or 3 for 10 the last couple of games. I mean, if you want an opportunity for a guy to get things right, you couldn't ask for a better opportunity. And I don't know how high he's going to be owned, but he's a guy that I'm looking at. And the other 2 guys that rate to be okay values here are Fournier and Isaac. But I don't know how excited I am about those guys and as far as ceilings go. But those 2 guys rate to be the next, I guess, the co-best plays along with Gordon. I thought about Bamba, especially on FanDuel, but on FanDuel, I don't think I can get away from Thomas Bryant. But we can talk about FanDuel because there are a couple of ways you can go with
Yeah.
And then there's also Terrence Ross, who is another one who could go off in this matchup. And on FanDuel, again, like there's a couple of different guys you could play at about the same price at shooting guard. So we could talk about that if we do FanDuel with Terrence Ross being one of them. But I mean, this is a game you can put up a score right off the bat. And, I think it's between that game and, maybe the New Orleans game are going to be the 2 most, exciting game, and just hope that it all stands when Lillard goes after the 10 o'clock game. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, those are good thoughts. Like, this is definitely a game that you can stack at the prices, but I want to make sure everyone's beware of a few things today. We're going to talk about how a lot of people are outrageously cheap. I've gone through this slate. It is a very, very strange, tricky one to figure out. So we're going to have to figure it out as we go because you've got a lot of guys who are priced so low. That's why a guy like Hachimura just put up 48 points the other day, and he's 5,200. Usually would be excited about a guy like that. I am excited because he's going to have no ownership, but I don't think I can expect that type of result from him very often. And I do think that, like, on a slate like this, you've got Aaron Gordon in probably as good an Aaron Gordon spot as you could get. Again, we don't know what that means. That might mean 10 fantasy points, and that might mean 60. But I'm willing to take that variance. I'm also very excited about Isaac. I think Isaac is actually going to be overlooked on this slate. And I just think this matchup screams Isaac. I don't care about paying higher for him on FanDuel. One thing I've been doing a lot lately, because we've had some extreme value situations and some weird mispricings, is almost just ignoring certain players' prices who are sort of in these mid-ranges. That so many of my lineups that I've been winning with lately have had these, these guys who are even just getting 5x at the right prices. This almost like filling for points just to differentiate lineup-wise. And also they have upside of 60 plus. So I think you're looking at a little mini stack from this game. And I think you're looking at playing, my theory is like you want to try and double the ownership of everybody against Washington all year long. So
say that one more time.
You double the projected ownership of every player against Washington all year long. Now, if it gets out of hand and in some slates it's 40% or something, you don't do that. But in general, you're not going to go wrong betting against a team that plays like Washington does. There's no one else really like them. I think they've given up 150 points 3 times this year. I don't think anybody else in the NBA has yet. Maybe one other team has. But anyway, it's just, you got to look at somebody from Orlando to get there. And you mentioned a guy I really like. I'm not crazy about his price, but I do really like Terrence Ross's upside. I think this matchup screams Terrence Ross also. All of these guys, the one guy who I'm not going to be high on is Fournier with probably going to be pretty high ownership. Fournier is a guy who I love to play at the right prices, and he's had some decent games, but he's one of those mid-tier guys that really doesn't ever really flex that monster ceiling that I want to win GPPs. And think about Fournier at 62 versus a different position, and you've got, take a guy like Porzingis at 65. I would rather take the shot on Porzingis, who can play poorly and get 45 fantasy points, than I would play Fournier personally.
Well, Bobby, I hate to do this, you know what I mean? Because, but it is only what do we have, 6, 7 games?
It's 7
I don't
games.
want to deviate too much from the game by game, but you brought up like 3 things that I want to hit on, again, philosophically or whatever. Like when you say something like, it's my theory that we should, go double ownership against Washington. My question is, again, is how much does the Washington matchup already factored into the ownership? So what you're saying then is that the public does not, and the projections do not adequately, are you saying that they do not adequately reflect the upside against the Washington matchup?
They don't radically reflect it. And if you can remember on a 13-game slate, I think it was, when Washington played Houston, the one of my few lineups where I actually played Harden and Westbrook together was my winning lineup, because it was 158 to 157. Bradley Beal on the other side, by the way, which minimum cost guys, that worked out pretty good because those guys put up a combined like 240 or something. They just play, the upside is so high for them. If you're playing tournaments, I'm not saying this was a way you have to load up in cash games against them. In tournaments against them, you have to treat them as much more volatile, and it's never going to quite equal out except for on smaller slates, especially if it's a team that people aren't used to targeting, like a team like Orlando, who, unless someone else is injured, and even with Vooch out right now, people aren't really sure exactly how to target. So I would suggest if you're playing multiple lineups, getting exposure to everyone, Ken Birch, and Birch, Fournier, Fultz, Bamba, Ross, Isaac, Gordon. I would plan on having at least 10% of all those guys, and then I would prioritize Isaac and Gordon, just because I really think Washington is it's like playing Coors Field. We've talked about this stuff before. When you're playing this fast, the other team's upside is just so much higher than what we've seen. And also Washington's sloppy with the ball. They also attack the basket a lot, which offers upside for guys like not Vooch, Isaac and Gordon. I just really like that spot. And then Bradley Beal's price, while it is too cheap, it's not significantly more too cheap than other people's too cheap of prices. Orlando's a very good defensive team, so running it back is a little bit tricky. I love Thomas Bryant. That's the one spot they've struggled, is rebounding, especially if Wagner's out, but I expect really high ownership if he is. If Wagner's in, I would still have no problem just sticking with Bryant at what will be lower ownership then. And again, it's just how you weigh these players. Playing a Bryant and Gordon, I don't mind at all. But I'm telling you, this is one of those weird days where the power forward center pricing just dominates everything. And honestly, there's a reason I'm only going to be playing a few different guards, because I love these forward spots so much.
Well, one guy that you mentioned, and then one more philosophical point is you did mention Marco Fultz, and just again, just narrative street. I think he is coming home. I think he's from the area, so maybe that's worth a little extra boost. I don't know, but
yeah, I like Fultz. I mean, it's a little bit the pricing 5.5 upside worry a little bit, but also this is the pre-matchup, so he could absolutely go out and get 40 plus fantasy points.
And the last thing before we go on to this is, you mentioned that, we both mentioned it, is about Fournier being while being a good play, maybe being a good median type play, that he's not really that flex your muscle ceiling type play. So again, when you're building lineups and you're building a portfolio of lineups, if you could play him, but I wouldn't play him as my ceiling type guy. Like if you have other type ceiling type off the board guys, and you need to put some semi-safe $6,200 guy in there, I have no problem putting him in there, but don't expect that the Fournier part of your lineup or your lineup portfolio to be that 9X, if you get lucky, type of play. He's going to be the guy that holds, right? The rest of your upside plays together.
The question on a day like today, and this is my first thought, is I think this is going to be a very high scoring day.
Okay.
So is holding good enough? Maybe, but I think in general you can hold in one or two spots. So Fournier is I like your point there. He's the guy you'd hold in your small forward spot or something like that. Maybe shooting today.
Let's do it. LaMarcus Aldridge is officially out today, by the way.
Okay, that actually does change a few things.
Okay, so going ahead to Detroit, Cleveland. Fortunately, I mean these I really only like the guys that rate to be good values are just the guys that are usually rated to be good values right now, with all the Detroit guys healthy, and that is AD and Blake. They both rate to be very similar as far as values go. As far as Drummond's, I mean, looks to be really good. I will say that on FanDuel, I found only kind of a couple of ways to go, and Brian is just gonna make a lot of it work for me, unless I really want to go down to Bomber or something like that. So I did try to make some lineups with AD as my center, and it became a little difficult, but he definitely rates to be a good play. The other guy, again, on Detroit, that, again, just, if you want to put him on FanDuel or whatever, is Langston Galloway. Again, I don't know how many minutes he's playing nowadays, but he's still cheap over there. And then on the Cleveland side, presuming everybody plays, again, if you want to try, oh my God, this is one of your guys you were talking about, these power forwards, is Love is 7,000. I mean, I don't know if he's good enough for today, but he certainly looks to be okay. And then there's Tristan Thompson. I don't know if I can do that, but those are the two guys that I would look at if I were going to play these guys at all.
Yeah, some other prices that stick out like sore thumbs, but we've also got to get used to that everything's underpriced. So let's adjust accordingly. I think that no matter what Drummond is in play here, I don't care if he was 10K, even on, I'm not going to care about money too much with him. I think that there is 20 plus upside here. This is a phenomenal rebounding spot. I absolutely love Drummond, and I love Blake at that price. I'm having trouble deciding how much I love Blake at that price, because I actually prefer Kevin Love on the other side at less ownership at only 7K, who I think you can expect. I mean, we haven't seen a game from Blake yet that we would be happy with. We know we know it could come, but Kevin Love, we certainly have, and he actually he's done it in games where he's gone 4 for 20. So I would rather play Kevin Love than Blake and Drummond, go that way, or even have a Blake and Love lineup or something like that. I also think Tristan Thompson is probably a little bit too cheap for this lineup, for this matchup, it's just, again, you're grading on how much too cheap these guys are. This game should stay close, and what's different about these teams is they don't play a lot of games that stay close. They both lose badly and sometimes even blow people out. So it's kind of an interesting spot. If you expect this game to stay close, I sort of like that little combo, but to be honest, just to give an idea of my ownerships, I would probably say about 20% for Blake and about 20% Drummond. I'm sorry, about 25% Drummond and about 25% Love. Maybe as high as 15% on Thompson.
You'd really get that much of those guys. Huh?
It's the early in the day. It's the early in the day script. I don't know that I'll stick with it. Okay. But an unowned Kevin Love at 7K with a guy who can put up 60. And actually, what is a good matchup for him, because you're pulling a big away from the basket no matter what you do. And Drummond's going to clear up all the rebounds from the Detroit side. He's going to have. It's going to be him and Tristan Thompson on the other side. So there is upside on this matchup for him to get there in multiple ways if it stays close. So 25 maybe a little bit high, but I do think that I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in 15 to 20% of my lineups. That's just
what about 15% Love against a 30% Porzingis? I guess we'll talk about that later.
Well, I'm going to get into that one, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Let's go ahead then to no Darius Garland today.
I don't think that I'm going to end up there, but because the price is still cheap so many places, I'm considering it, but I don't think I love the minutes. I love the shooting ability. I think he's a much better player than people think. And it's just weird with their rotations. I think that's the wrong slate for me.
Okay. Miami, Toronto. You got to walk me through this just a little bit, because I don't want to overlook this, but right now it looks like Dragic is out.
Yeah.
As of now, Dion Waiters, I have him as out, but I don't know. I just want to make sure I don't overlook any Justice Winslow possibilities, or Kendrick Nunn, or Tyler Hero again. Right now, what I'm looking at, the only guys that are looking to be that good are Butler, who's fine, and then on the Toronto side, the usual. Siakam and Van Vliet, and your guy who just keeps on doing it is a newbie. I am seeing Serge Ibaka projected for 24 minutes. I didn't even know he was back.
He's back. Yeah, I know. I think he's going to play too. This is mostly a stay away game for me, with the exception of one massive play that I'm ready to make. I know he hasn't been there yet, but I know he probably will get ownership today just because he's so cheap. But I'm going to play Justice Winslow. He's going to play some point. It's a little different than it was like last year when we lost them. Like in this spot, last year he was just putting a 45, 50 every game. It felt like. I just love the price. I think he's the one I want to side with the most on the Miami side of the ball, and could potentially get the most uptick. Now it could be none at 4.9 also, but I think that I would lean towards Winslow a little bit myself, and I right now have him significantly owned, and I have a little bit of Siakam, I guess. But that's really all I want in this game, and I don't really want to get too much into it because, although maybe a little bit of hero, but I don't want to go crazy with this spot. It's just not a great game, but I don't want to just because somebody's out go too nuts with it. Except for I do love the Winslow upside, and I guess hero too, but I think Winslow is more my guy today.
So you don't have to answer this right now, but Winslow, you like him, I would presume, more than Tim Hardaway Jr., right?
Yes, of course I do.
Well, he just became part of my shell lineup.
No, I know everybody's all into Tim Hardaway. We'll get into that in a minute.
No, because I was looking. My first thing I was going to ask you is, I'm looking for a guy to kick Hardaway out of this, and this is a perfect one to start with. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get after it then. So here's a question I have for you. All right, for Dallas against New Orleans, right? So if you read enough content, you read whatever, you'll see obviously pace up spot for Dallas. Because, I mean, look, whenever you play Washington, whenever you play New Orleans, unless they're playing each other, it's going to be a pace up spot for everybody, right? So before we discuss if Luka's a lock, if Kristaps is Porzingis is a lock, what I want to ask you is how much does playing New Orleans actually help the way Dallas plays, right? As far as getting more upside from Luka than he always gets. Secondly, how much of that is factored into projections and into ownership? And I guess that's kind of a philosophical question. It's kind of answered by the projections. But with that said, the two guys that are looking to be the top values, obviously on Dallas, are going to be Luka and Porzingis, and they both look to be, from a just points per dollar thing, very similar. Which means Luka, because he has more higher projected points, is going to be someone you'd want to get in if you can do it. So Luka and Kristaps, if you can get them, great. And on the other side, New Orleans side, again, I don't see anything. Well, I wasn't going to say I don't see anything particularly fancy, but let's talk about the two guys that are not fancy are Ingram and Holiday. They both rate to be pretty good values here. And then Lonzo is popping. I guess I have him playing between 30 and 32 minutes. So yeah, he's looking to be a really, really good play. And then another guy who's looking to be about 30, 32 minutes is Josh Hart. He could get in this if you want to stack this game a little bit. And then the other decision you have to make is this Jackson Hayes thing, right? So Derek Favors is out, and we flashed back to a couple of weeks ago where he was out, and then everybody was all over Okafor or Hayes, whoever was starting. And I remember when I was watching the games, I was saying that Okafor is just much better than Hayes, but I guess I was wrong. I guess Hayes is going to end up being the starter or whatever it is. But that is something to look at, is especially if we're going to stack this game and play multiple New Orleans guys and run it back with Luka or something like that. I mean, I would at least do a little research into those two centers. Right now, neither of them are projected to be particularly great. But, as long as you're going to look at this game, you may as well analyze those guys also.
Yeah, I don't mind going really with the hard, crazy core game stack here. Obviously, but you've got the chalky guys. You've got the Lonzo, Porzingis, Luka, and Hardaway Jr. are going to be popular. Ingram is going to be overlooked a little bit. And again, his price is too cheap, but so is everyone else's. But I would encourage, if you're going to play a mix of this game, maybe include somebody a little bit off the board. I think Dwight Powell is a really interesting tournament play.
Ooh.
You think about it at 4K with the size against New Orleans, who plays fast and get in run a center who can get up and down the court. There's just some upside there. So I actually feel like, let's say Hayes was to get 8% ownership, Powell will have 2. You know what I mean? Powell's not going to be owned by much at all, and I really think he's kind of interesting. I don't even mind taking a shot on Kleber in these types of ceiling matchups. I really think that you've got to try and get as much exposure as you can to some of these spots. And these teams don't guard the 3. Kleber could get hot from out there as well as rebounding. I don't know what I'm going to do with the bigs on New Orleans yet. I'm stuck in, I think as of right now, probably just fading, with maybe a tiny hope of a 5% Melly in case he gets a little extra run, he gets hot at 3K. But I probably too thin on this slate. I think that overall, my priorities in order are heavily on Porzingis. I'll be ahead of the field on him. I'll be ahead of the field on Luka probably. I'll be ahead of the field slightly on Lonzo, and I will be well ahead of the field on Ingram. And then you got obviously Powell and the other guys you're filtering in. But I actually think even Drew Holiday is a really solid play at his price. But again, a lot of guys underpriced today.
Well, I mean, you could make all of that work. You know, you could do whatever you want. Like you could run kind of an off the board type stack with Lonzo. I have Lonzo and Drew Holiday right now, and then you could have Powell and Doncic, and you could go and you can probably grab Ingram if you make a couple of concessions elsewhere. Or maybe not. We'll see.
There's a lot of games on this slate. I mean, this is a really funny spot because I expect there to be a lot of points scored tonight. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. All right. So Dwight Powell is definitely the nugget that I gotta include my player pool and figure out how I want to use that.
Yeah, one of Powell or Kleber should have a pretty nice opportunity here. I wouldn't necessarily play them as one-offs, but I think they make for a nice part of a stack that's going to be at low. They'll be the low on part.
Yeah. Okay. Houston, San Antonio. So Capella is back, and you know, as usual, Westbrook and Harden are. Well, I wouldn't say as usual, but Westbrook and Harden are both projecting very similarly as far as not as raw points, but as far as values go.
Yeah.
So you know, the question is, which of them do you play, if any? I don't think I can get away with playing both. On the San Antonio side, with Aldridge out, I think it becomes interesting. Now, first of all, you know, Rudy Gay is going to continue to pop as a really, really good value here. And I know you don't really like to play him that much, but
no. Today's the day I don't mind it on time.
Okay, so I mean, you can get away with, you know, well, first of all, Podol is obviously going to have his projection increased with LMA out, so that's something you could consider. He's more expensive than Dwight Powell, but he's another guy that you could put in that center spot if you wanted. I just worry about. I don't want to get too into this, but I worry about this game just being a complete disaster. I don't know. I mean, with LMA out and San Antonio not playing really good defense anyway, I don't know how involved I'm going to get in this. But if I were in the San Antonio side, I think DeRozan would be the guy I would go with, along with Rudy Gay. There was one FanDuel lineup where if I felt like it, I could have put in DeJounte Murray, but I mean, Christ.
I don't think I actually think there might. So you have a team that plays three guards almost all the time, and what do we know? Especially now with San Antonio, they have too many guards. They have a bunch of little guys, so they're going to have all those guys in the court at the same time. Everybody gets a boost all of a sudden, especially with Aldridge out. So I think we give boosts to Murray. I think we give boosts to Derek White. These are guys who I'm looking at right now. I don't know how much I'm going to have them. I need to do some projected rotations. Trey Lyles could be in line for a few more minutes, which he never quite gets. But like the minutes have not updated yet, except for they've sort of all gone to Podol. I could easily see this game going a different direction. I also could see him having trouble keeping up with Capella up and down the court. So you might end up seeing more Trey Lyles against Capella. I think this is a spot right now where I'm just going to have to keep. I think I have more interest in this as a game stack than I ever did. I would lean Westbrook on the Houston side. I really love the matchup for Westbrook, and it's funny because we all talk about how DeJounte Murray and Derek White are good defenders, but they still have trouble with this position. And actually, Westbrook is, I mean, it's just ridiculous how cheap he is. I know we talk about a lot of cheap guys. Given the pace of this matchup, I think that Westbrook should be 10.2, and he's 8.8. I think he can fail and get you there, and I think he can do well and crush the slate for you. He's going to be my priority, maybe my highest owned player as of right now. I also mentioned that I like the forward spot a lot, so Westbrook gets my priority at guard. I have no problem if you want to play James Harden instead of Luka anytime. I don't think playing both of them together, well, you might be able to tonight, but it's going to be I don't know if it's optimal necessarily. I would be trying to get some of those guys and then maybe pick a DeRozan or a Gay or maybe even just run it back with any of these other pieces like a DeJounte Murray should get a boost, in this spot, like we just talked about it. And even Derek White's going to be in my left. Bryn Forbes is going to get some ownership just because the ball's got to go somewhere. So the usage has to go somewhere. They don't have that many high usage guys anyway. And Aldridge is one. It's medium high usage. So Rudy Gay, DeJounte Murray, everybody. Basically, I'm looking at a bunch of Deaners, a bunch of 10%ers with maybe doubling that on DeRozan and Gay.
Is there a guy who I was about to ask is there a guy in San Antonio that you think would do well in both close game and in blowout environments?
It's a good question. It depends. They've been doing some different things, so you could say it's possible that it could happen for Murray that way, just depending on how the game flow works.
Maybe your Trey Lyles play is like a last guy in a.
I'm not as worried about a blowout here as you are.
Yeah, I don't know.
Houston's like my team, obviously, now because I love Westbrook more than anybody. But I look, they could blow him out on the road, but in general, Pop is a good coach. This game should stay fairly competitive, in my opinion, even without all this.
Yeah, I also think that I don't know if I'm going to go here, but I think the LMA injury, being out, I think Capella just destroys them. I don't know.
It feels like that, yeah.
I don't know if Podol's the answer. You know what I mean? That's going to be I think it's going to be a tough game. But yeah, I'm with you on the Westbrook. On FanDuel, you can have some really fun point guard pairings. You could go with Westbrook and Lillard, right, and put someone on the other side of that Lillard game, and you could actually then go DeRozan too, and you could have two little mini game stacks there.
Yeah. I like it. All right, so.
All right, let's go. Let's move on then.
Okay, so I just really that game just became a lot more interesting to me, obviously, like with this news, and I'm just keep an eye out for the starting lineup and stuff too. I'm curious.
Well, what are we looking at? You know
I want to first of all make sure that Podol's starting. Yeah, not that he still can't get there anyway, and also if the ownership gets too high on Podol, jump a little bit. Like you don't need to play a crazy high on Podol here, and I could see that potentially happening.
Well, the problem is, first of all, like I've seen games where Podol starts and gets 22 minutes anyway, right?
Yeah, but we haven't seen that much of him without LMA.
Well, that's the thing, and with Capella in there, I don't think they're going to be able to put David Robinson in the game. You know what I mean? Like
they can put. I think that it actually might be a better matchup for them with Lyles than it is with Podol, because Capella's rim running and athleticism is going to be hard for Podol to keep up and down on the court. So you're going to have to play a guy like Lyles who's more agile like that. That's my personal take.
Maybe it's
not like Capella's going to beat you with posting up.
Maybe it's Shimazi Me Too season.
That's my only fear is that they play some of those other weird random guys and somebody gets 20 minutes or something.
All right, so Lakers against Denver could be a preview of the Western Conference finals or semifinals, and yet for whatever reason, it's a good matchup it's a great basketball game probably, but fantasy-wise, I really hate to do this, but I don't think I'm going to play a share of anybody from either team. I don't. Am I out of my mind?
I certainly hear you. I have guys in my script right now, but I don't know how much I really end up with of them. It just doesn't feel right on this slate. I know Kuzma's been terrible, and he's not getting the minutes, and they've been rotating a lot. I still think there's potential upside for him. He's 4K. It's kind of like if he somehow was hot and got into 30 minutes, you could be talking about a guy who put up 40 fantasy points. He's put up 50 or 60 before.
I've played one lineup minimum with Kyle Kuzma in it. I think every game since he's come back. I'm with you. I think he's got the talent to break out eventually. But.
Yeah, it feels tempting. And then you look at the prices, and there's some sticker shock on both Davis and LeBron. It looks a little cheap on both of them to me. I would say that if I think I'm going to play them, I'm just going to play this game as a hard fought and the Stars take it down the stretch and play one of those guys with Jokic. I don't really see myself wanting to take one-offs in this game from anywhere else. Like, if you just end up on a Davis or a LeBron, of course they can get you there and they can score 7, anytime. But this is definitely not a matchup that screams yourself like a great matchup. These are two excellent defensive teams, two teams that aren't going to push the pace.
No.
It's just it's a game where I don't want to get crazy involved, but I don't mind that a little 1v1, and I'll probably have a lineup that has something like that.
Now you like the Jokic pairing with the AD or LeBron rather than Jamal Murray?
Yeah, if I'm going to do it, I would go Jokic. I actually think the Lakers. Yeah, I just think that he's got upside against their big men. This is still JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard. Like, let's not get all crazy because their team defense has been awesome. Jokic is a I mean, should probably put up 45 to 60 fantasy points, but then again, he sometimes puts up 30 in those spots. And, I don't know. I'm not like in love with it. I'm just saying if I'm going to do it, I probably want to run back somebody, and I think it's going to be Jokic for me.
Right. Okay, so if things aren't going your way, you didn't have enough of Orlando, Washington, or you had your Orlando, Washington wasn't as good as you thought it would be. Here we go, another semi-island game at the end with Damian Lillard playing. So you have Portland against LAC. On the Portland side, I have Lillard as being clearly the best value on Portland. And then I don't know if I could do this anymore, but the next guy I have is CJ McCollum. My caution with Lillard, again, just from, every time is does the presence of Carmelo Anthony and his desire and willingness, and, I don't blame him. He's been great to shoot the ball as much as he does, impact the usage of Damian Lillard. And he's one of the reasons why he's down to 8,400, I think, is because of that. So that is, in fact, factored in a little bit. So given that, I mean, he still rates to be a pretty good median value. Now, if you do get in that situation where, forget if it's tied, okay, going down the stretch. What we found, or I found over the last couple of years, is Lillard's best games are when they're down like 9. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And here down 9, he comes in the game with 6 minutes to go. Then literally nobody gets to touch the ball, right? Now, I don't know if that's the case with Carmelo, but whatever it is. So, the spread here is 9. So I just to throw that out there, and I didn't realize that going in. In any case, on the Clipper side, I don't, the usual guys. I mean, Lou Williams, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. If it were me, I would probably go Lou Williams, because if you get that kind of, if we were going to do that, like 1v1 thing, because I think that Lou Williams is the kind of guy that could just get on one of those freaking heaters and just, okay, Lou, you want to shoot, I'm going to shoot, you're going to shoot, I'm going to shoot, whatever it is. And I don't think Kawhi will mind. You know what I mean? Just fine, enjoy, The other guy that's looking to be a good value, boy, what are these? JaMychal Green at 3,500 in a slate where we haven't really found any 3,500 guys. I don't know where this comes from, but what I'm looking at shows him as a positive value at 3,500, which is not too, you don't get that too often. So I have to look into that a little bit more, but he is showing up as a value for whatever that's worth. And then the next guy I have is Patrick Beverley. But I certainly have no problem with Lillard, with Lou Williams. I mean, again, maybe it's psychological for me, but I just love it when it's late at night, and I always have a chance with Lillard when it looks good. You know what I mean? Sometimes it just doesn't. But I think in this thing, look, it's I don't know, nationally televised game, but it's a huge game for Portland. They've been playing much better, so this is a really, really good test for them. And, I don't know if you saw this, but they were interviewing a couple of guys from the Clippers last night, specifically about Carmelo Anthony, and Paul George was even saying, I don't know why they gave him such a hard time. All the guy does is wants to play. Oh, this is Paul George talking. I heard about his plus minus stuff, and who cares about that? Good for him, whatever it is. So this game is going to get a lot of attention from both these coaches, and I don't know. I think this could be a really, really good game where the offenses just do really, really well. And again, if you're not worried about Lillard having to fight against Patrick Beverley and Paul George and all these guys and Kawhi defending him, I mean, I have no problem with taking a shot at that.
I don't worry about Lillard against anybody anymore.
There you go.
That's the truth. And the weird part is that everybody, again, the price shock is making this tricky a little bit, because I don't mind the idea of running back Kawhi or Paul George. I would lean Paul George, actually.
Okay.
I know that's a little bit of a weird take, but the guy who I'm going to keep coming back to as your my off the board play is a guy you actually you mentioned him, but it's Patrick Beverley. He's had some big games while both these guys were playing.
Interesting. And
he doesn't really need to – this is a team that's sloppy, that is poor defensively. He doesn't need to shoot the ball, obviously, to get there. Look at the guy took 20 fantasy points his last game. He took 3 shots. You can expect the minutes probably to have a little bit of a ceiling. You look at his game log, like basically every other game getting us like either huge scores or really solid scores for this 4,500 price tag. I think it's sort of a sneaky shot at value could be Patrick Beverley tonight at 4,500, and I don't think anyone's going to play him.
Well, this is a really, really, I think this is a very instructive point here. So again, as you give me these kind of ideas, I just kind of just plug them into these things. And I was going to ask you, do you like Patrick Beverley better or than Justice Winslow for the hell of it, right? But then what's interesting is assuming Winslow is higher owned, which he has to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And assuming that they're even equal, again, the fact that you could play Beverley, the fact that this particular lineup, for example, has Beverley with another Clipper guy running it back with Lillard, whatever, I think that could break a tie, even if the ownerships were similar, just because that fact that you get more of a stack situation using Beverley as opposed to a one-off with Winslow. So again, you talk about a low-owned shot. You know what I mean? Like you said, if people are going to go this Clipper route, look, I like to consider myself someone who follows the public, at least from the initial takes, and then I intentionally deviate from it. And if my first look at these projections, whatever, just rattled off 3-4 names and just completely just barely mentioned Beverley, I guarantee you that's what a lot of people are going to do. So he's going to be sub 5%. And even if people play this game, he's going to be the last person that people play. So
this is a great other overall point, though, about DFS. So if Patrick Beverley on this slate was 3.9 versus 4.5, he's $600 more expensive. Yep. If he was 3.9, he'd be 25% owned. And I really don't think that's even like a close to an exaggeration. That 4.5 is not enough of a difference. And while it might hit his median average, when you're putting up 36s and 53s here and there, that's what you're playing him for in tournaments. And I'm not saying you can expect 50 points from Patrick Beverley, but if he gets you 30 plus here, you're in good shape, especially because you can play him with a guy like a Winslow. You don't need to even choose between them. You could play both of them, get potentially 60 points from both of them, and you're off to the races. Like, I really like Beverley as a contrarian play tonight. I don't know that, who knows what we're going to hear throughout the day, but he is a definite guy I'm looking at. And another thing is, you mentioned Lou Will. I'm trying to get on board with it. It's hard for me to click that trigger when both Paul George and Kawhi are playing. The JaMychal Green thing might be a little bit like, I love playing JaMychal Green more than anyone. So when I see them, he's projecting well, it freaks me out a little bit when everyone else is more high on him than I am. But I'm going to have to wait to see on that one. If there's better value that opens up, I'll look elsewhere. I don't really understand why with Kawhi and George playing, you would want to go crazy with Green.
You brought up, a couple of sentences ago, a really, really kind of advanced way to play, which, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, maybe another time, but if you just talk for a minute about it. So I just, for example, was looking at just kind of fiddling around. I have Rudy Gay at 5,200. I'm just looking at what other guys in this position at 5,200. And I was looking at, guys like Josh Hart, very similar price. If you want to go to Bertans, similar price. Anunoby, similar price. Ross, similar price. Like all these guys that we've kind of talked about today. And, this has been a conversation we've had over the last couple of years is when I ask you, boy, I'm just between these kind of two guys, these two 5,200 values, should I play, should I just spread out like four of them, 4 different lineups, whatever. And what you keep going back to is what, just play them both, and figure something else out around there. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't do that is kind of sneaky advanced, you know what I mean, by you. That especially when you can get away with it on DraftKings easier than FanDuel. I think I can't quantify how valuable that approach is, but it certainly seems instinctively to be a real interesting and immediate way to be different because a lot of people are going to, again, think the same way I do. Boy, I'm between these 5,200 guys, I'll just pick this one. Or I'll make 4 lineups and pick, one 5,200 guy in all 4 of them. When you say, what, I'll just, who says the rest of my lineup is so great? I'll put these 5,200 guys, I'll take 2 spots or 3 spots for them and differentiate elsewhere. Then you have 2 or 3 that guys you think are good value, and very few people are going to be playing them together.
Exactly, and that's exactly what in tournament it's such a huge opportunity, especially in the smaller slates. I think it really is really valuable to try and play as many guys the same price as you can. Literally, it's just not how people think. Their brains just don't work that way. They decide either or all the time. So It's just an interesting way to look at it. Anyway, man, I think this has been a good one. Any final thought? Oh, we should get over to FanDuel, I guess, for a minute before we get out of here.
Yeah, real quick, I'll show you what I did. My first, I made a couple of lineups just to kind of And this kind of reflects, some of the stuff that we talked about away. And you'll see that all of them have Westbrook in them, right? This was just a way that I just kind of went. Again, I didn't really see any real difference as far as values between FanDuel and DraftKings, with the exception of, who was it that I saw that was particularly good? I really didn't. I think Bryant maybe, but I didn't really see, at least first glance, any real distinct difference. Maybe Terrence Ross was really good on FanDuel. I forget. Let me pull him up really, really quickly.
Porzingis is definitely more expensive and will be lower owned on FanDuel. So
Okay.
I'm still good with him. It's a great ceiling matchup for those guys. So I would have played. I don't mind him at 8K over here.
Yeah, and obviously I put Tim Hardaway in because I had nothing else to do right now. But yeah, I don't actually on FanDuel. Orlando guys really just none of them look good. But I'll tell you who looks really, really good on FanDuel is Hachimura at 5,400. At the power forward position. He's actually, when I'm looking at, he's projected to be, I think, the best value on. Yeah, I'm looking as the best value on FanDuel, which means that his ownership is probably gonna follow. But with Kristaps, Kristaps actually showing being a pretty good value on FanDuel also, which probably means it's gonna be so chalky on DraftKings. I don't know, but again, I would just want to take a quick look to make sure there was nothing particularly missing on FanDuel, and I don't see anything.
No, I think that you pretty much got most of the things we covered here. Guys, hit us up on Twitter, on our YouTube channel. Make sure to give us the like and the thumbs up. We love doing these videos for you guys. We appreciate all the positive support, and we are going to keep crushing DFS. Sheets, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I hate to do this. We didn't discuss real quickly, just because I have him in here. Did you have any take on Bamba?
I have some interest in. I have interest in him for sure because of the matchup on both sides.
Okay. All right, that was it. I just didn't want to have to do a whole new video because I forgot that
one. All right, man. Hey, well, thanks for tuning in there with us, for everybody. Sheets, thanks for being here as always. We're going to keep pumping these videos out, and we will have the website up soon. So talk to you guys shortly.